Welcome to the debate. So imagine you're standing at the entrance of a massive, just pitch black warehouse.
Okay.
And you know with absolute certainty that there are priceless materials hidden somewhere inside. But for over 40 decades,
42 years to be exact.
right, 42 years, everyone who has walked into that warehouse has only been armed with like a tiny flickering flashlight. They stumble around in the dark, maybe they find a little bit of value here and there, but mostly,
They just burn through time and capital.
yeah, lots of capital.
Exactly.
Now, imagine someone finally installs industrial-grade floodlights and just flips the switch. That is exactly what we are looking at today. For the first time since 1984, Egypt is conducting a comprehensive airborne geophysical survey. It's this massive technological undertaking designed to illuminate the country's hidden mineral wealth.
And the goal they've set is, well, it's huge.
It's staggering. They want to catapult the mining sector's contribution to the national GDP from less than 1% today all the way up to an ambitious 6%.
Which is a fascinating moment in economic history, without a doubt. I mean, it really is. But the question we actually have to ask is what happens after those floodlights come on?
Right.
Because knowing exactly where the treasure is buried doesn't magically transport it out of the ground, process it, and, integrate it into a highly complex global supply chain.
And that right there is the exact tension we are unpacking today. We're looking at this through the lens of the recent strategic announcements regarding Egypt's newly reformed Mineral Wealth and Mining Industries Authority. My perspective, and I think the data backs this up, is that when you combine this kind of hyper-precise, cutting-edge geological mapping with an aggressive, streamlined administrative reform, you create a frictionless environment.
Frictionless. That's a strong word.
It is. You essentially build a de-risked engine, right? One that is perfectly calibrated to attract cautious global investors and actually drive that 600% economic growth.
And see, I look at this from a slightly different angle. The mapping initiative is a technological triumph. Yes, I won't deny that. But it is merely the prologue.
The prologue?
Yeah. Beautiful, high-fidelity maps and fast-tracked licenses, they're necessary, sure, but relying on them as the primary engine vastly underestimates the complex, gritty industrial realities of extracting and, crucially, localizing the processing of strategic minerals. Let me just say, a digital portal is great for paperwork, but it cannot build the heavy infrastructure required for a 6% GDP contribution.
Well, let's actually dig into what this de-risking looks like, because I think the sheer scale of the technology changes the conversation entirely. We are looking at a partnership between the Egyptian government and Spain's Excalibur.
Right, the mapping company.
Exactly. A company that has executed over 1,400 global projects across 6 continents. They are deploying advanced technologies to measure magnetic fields, gravity, radiometric signatures, and electromagnetic resistance.
It's heavy science.
It really is. We aren't just talking about taking nice photographs from an airplane. We are talking about utilizing physics to literally see through solid Earth. So if I'm a global investor, you have completely removed my upfront exploration risk.
Have they, though?
I don't have to spend tens of millions of dollars drilling blind holes anymore. Doesn't that fundamental certainty completely change the economic calculus?
Okay, let's break down how that technology actually works. Because it is brilliant, but it has severe limits.
Go on.
When Excalibur flies those specialized aircraft, they are looking for anomalies. A gravity survey detects slight variations in the Earth's gravitational pull caused by, highly dense ore bodies.
Right.
And radiometric mapping detects the natural decay of elements like uranium and thorium in the rock, which, by the way, often sit right next to the rare earth elements we need for things like wind turbines. So yes, you are handing investors a highly accurate map, but certainty of existence does not equal certainty of extraction.
Walk me through that disconnect. If I know exactly where a deposit is, and I know the exact scale of it, why wouldn't I bring my capital to extract it? Banks lend against proven reserves all the time.
They do.
So by providing this base layer of empirical data, the Egyptian state is essentially subsidizing the riskiest part of the mining life cycle.
I hear you, but because the map tells you where it is, it doesn't pay for the road to get it there. Look at the actual geography they are surveying. They aren't just scanning one convenient location outside of Cairo.
No, it's a massive footprint.
Exactly. They are covering 6 massive, distinct zones. You've got the South and Northeastern Desert, the Sinai Peninsula, the North and Southwestern Desert, the Bahariya Oasis, and Abu Tartur in the New Valley.
Which represents enormous potential.
Yes, but these aren't just dots on a map. These are entirely different logistical puzzles. Finding a massive deposit of strategic minerals deep in the Northwestern Desert or Abu Tartur is fantastic geology.
Right.
But if extracting it requires building a 300-kilometer heavy-haul railway, stringing up high-voltage power lines, and constructing a dedicated water pipeline just to keep the dust down, that saved exploration time doesn't negate the billions in capital expenditure still required. The economic truth of extracting that wealth is always bound by the physical world.
Okay, I see the scale of the physical challenge you are outlining. The geography is unforgiving. No one is denying that. But let's pause and look at how the government is attacking the non-physical barriers, because historically, those have been just as paralyzing.
Fair point.
You mentioned the years it takes to build infrastructure. Historically, half of those years were eaten up before a single shovel hit the dirt, just navigating red tape.
Bureaucracy is definitely an issue.
A huge issue. The second major part of this strategy is the total overhaul of that bureaucracy. They have transformed the Mineral Wealth Authority into an independent economic entity by direct presidential directive.
Yeah.
They are launching a digital portal and a single window system for licensing.
Which is a massive shift from traditional ministry operations. I completely agree with that. Operating as an independent economic entity gives them the flexibility to move at the speed of international business.
Exactly. Think of this new single window system like TSA pre-check at the airport.
Ooh, I like that.
Right? It doesn't fly the plane for you, obviously, but it gets you through the terminal, past security, into your gate without having to take off your shoes and unpack your bags at 5 different checkpoints.
Sure.
When global investors gather at the Egypt Mining Forum in Cairo in September 2026, Egypt is going to present them with a clear path to the gate. You have the empirical data showing you the exact size of the prize, and you have a frictionless administrative process to claim it. Why wouldn't that combination trigger the massive influx of capital needed to build the railways and power lines you just mentioned?
I love the TSA pre-check analogy, but let's stretch it to its logical conclusion.
Okay.
TSA pre-check is fantastic, but if you get to the gate and there is no airplane, or if the airplane has no fuel, you still aren't flying anywhere.
Well,
Getting a license quickly through a single window is the easiest part of the heavy industrial life cycle. Fast-tracking a PDF is not the same as fast-tracking a complex industrial supply chain.
right, but you can't even start the supply chain if you're waiting 3 years for the PDF.
True, but when those massive conglomerates sit down in Cairo at the 2026 forum, their financial models aren't just factoring in how fast they can get a permit, they are calculating baseload energy costs, water rights, labor availability, and equipment importation logistics.
I completely understand the skepticism. I do. But I think we are missing the historical precedent that is already right there in the Eastern Desert.
You're talking about Sakari?
Yes, look at the legacy of the Sukari gold mine. It is Egypt's largest mining complex, and incidentally, the very place from which the launch of the 2026 forum was announced.
Yep.
Sukari is a world-class asset that operates at a massive scale. It proves that the physical and logistical barriers in these remote regions can absolutely be overcome when the resource is rich enough. If they could do it there, why wouldn't a streamlined, modern one-stop shop armed with 21st century geophysical data replicate that success across multiple new sites in the Bahariya Oasis or Sinai?
Because Sakari is a gold mine.
And
this is where we really have to look closely at the source of material and the specific stated goals of the 6% GDP target. Sukari overcomes those logistical hurdles because gold is a highly unique commodity.
how so?
It is incredibly high value and incredibly low volume. You can dig it up, crush the ore, smelt it into door bars right there on site using a relatively small furnace, and literally fly the wealth out in a helicopter.
Wow, okay, I see your point.
The economics of gold are insulated from broader infrastructure deficits, but the new geophysical survey explicitly targets something very different.
You referring to the focus on strategic minerals required for renewable energy and advanced technologies?
Exactly. We're talking copper, lithium, cobalt, rare earth elements. This is a completely different ballgame than gold. The strategy outlined for the newly named Mineral Wealth and Mining Industries Authority does not stop at just digging up these raw ores and putting them on a bulk carrier ship.
No, the mandate goes further.
The explicit mandate is to localize mining industries and maximize value added to support the national economy. This is where the 600% growth leap meets industrial reality.
But isn't that shift to strategic minerals exactly why the economic potential is so massive? I mean, the entire world is in a desperate race to secure supply chains for the energy transition.
Oh, absolutely.
Every major industrialized nation is looking for secure, diversified sources of these materials to escape traditional geopolitical choke points.
The global demand is practically limitless, yes. But to maximize value added on strategic minerals, to actually capture that 6% of GDP, you can't just export raw dirt. You need to process it.
Right.
And an advanced processing plant for rare earths or copper isn't just a traditional mine. It is essentially a massive, highly complex, often toxic chemical refinery.
Which requires a lot of setup.
A ton. You need millions of gallons of water for acid leaching. You need a massive, hyper-reliable power grid to handle the base load of smelting operations. You need specialized hazardous waste management. Building that kind of heavy, energy-intensive industrialization in the deep south of the Western Desert is not something you solve just by making the licensing process frictionless.
That is a stark picture of the mechanics involved, I admit. But, I look at that exact same complexity and I draw the opposite conclusion.
Really?
Yeah. I don't see the need for downstream industrialization as an impossible bottleneck. I see it as the exact reason why this unprecedented level of mapping and administrative reform is the only way forward.
How so?
Because no global mining conglomerate is going to invest $2 billion to build a chemical refinery and an accompanying power plant unless they are 100% certain that they have a 30-year supply of high-grade ore to feed it.
Well, it's true.
By utilizing Excalibur's airborne technologies to integrate magnetic, gravity, and radiometric data, Egypt is proving the long-term, multi-decade viability of these reserves. The clarity of the new legislative environment, combined with the sheer scale of the empirical data, it provides the foundational trust needed to attract the highly specialized, tech-focused giants.
I see what you're saying.
These are the only entities capable of bringing in the capital to build that localized industry. They wouldn't even glance at the map if they thought it would take 5 years to get a piece of paper signed, let alone decades to prove the reserves.
The tech-focused mining companies are absolutely looking for stable jurisdictions with proven data. We completely agree on that. But localizing a highly technical industry requires more than just a willing foreign investor and a good map. It requires domestic absorption capacity.
Absorptive capacity. What do you mean by that in this context?
It means the country's internal ability to actually absorb and operate that advanced industry. It requires a highly trained local workforce of metallurgical engineers, robust secondary supply chains for chemical reagents, and vast amounts of reliable energy.
Right.
Now, the project proudly notes that Egypt has strong infrastructure and diverse energy sources, which is absolutely true in a broad macroeconomic sense around the population centers.
Yeah, they've built a lot recently.
But operating a smelter near the capital is a very different reality than operating one in Abu Tartor. The global track record of developing nations trying to force the localization of strategic mineral processing is decidedly mixed.
Because of the costs?
Often, the capital required for the downstream processing is so astronomically high that investors demand massive state subsidies or sovereign guarantees, which, can quickly eat into the very GDP growth the sector is supposed to generate.
But aren't we already seeing the state proactively building that local capacity? Look at how the survey itself is being executed. They didn't just write a check to a Spanish company and wait for the results in the mail.
No, they didn't.
The execution actively involves the Nuclear Materials Authority. It utilizes an aircraft belonging to the Mineral Wealth Authority itself, operated in conjunction with local drone tech.
That's a fair point.
They are actively integrating accumulated national scientific and technical expertise to maximize the accuracy of the outputs. To me, that suggests the state is deeply aware of the need for localized capacity and is building it systematically, starting right now at the exploration phase.
That is actually one of the smartest aspects of the entire initiative. I'll give you that. Having Egyptian geologists and nuclear scientists working directly alongside Excalibur's experts to analyze this geophysical data ensures vital knowledge transfer. It builds institutional memory.
Exactly. It's an investment in people.
But again, operating a survey aircraft or analyzing radiometric data, while highly technical, is fundamentally different from managing the metallurgical complexities of a rare earth leaching facility. My concern is simply that policymakers and investors might view the completion of this magnificent aerial survey as the crossing of the finish line.
Ah, I see.
In reality, flipping on the floodlights just shows you the starting line of a grueling industrial marathon.
I see that. But we also have to consider the strategic advantage of surveying 6 different regions at once. They aren't putting all their hopes on one remote desert location.
True, the scope is massive.
Right, covering everything from the Sinai Peninsula down to the New Valley, they are effectively creating a highly diversified portfolio of geological assets. If the deep western desert proves too logistically complex for immediate downstream industrialization, perhaps the eastern desert presents a more straightforward path. The data allows this newly independent economic entity to sequence its offerings logically.
Sequencing is the magic word there.
Right. They can push what they've called the buried mountains of gold in areas with established logistics. That generates immediate revenue, proves the single window concept works, and builds momentum. Then, simultaneously, they can lay the 10 to 15-year groundwork for the more complex strategic minerals in the remote areas.
If that is the strategy they present, then it is brilliant. And frankly, that kind of strategic sequencing is exactly what the global capital markets will be looking for at the Egyptian Mining Forum 2026.
Definitely.
Investors won't just want to see the maps. They will want to see the prioritization. If the authority can articulate a clear, phased approach, saying, here's the data for our high-value, low-volume gold deposits to generate short-term cash flow, and over here is our long-term plan for developing the infrastructure needed for strategic renewables, then that leap from 1% to 6% of GDP becomes much more credible over time.
And I think the structural reforms suggest a very pragmatic understanding of that exact timeline. The fact that the mandate explicitly shifted the authority to an independent economic entity shows an awareness that this sector requires business-minded agility.
Oh, absolutely.
They recognize that capital is highly mobile. A mining conglomerate looking for copper or lithium can choose to invest in South America, they can go to Australia, or they can look across Africa. By combining Excalibur's massive global expertise with a unified one-stop shop, Egypt is aggressively pitching itself as the most data-rich, friction-free jurisdiction available on the market today.
And that pitch is exactly what makes this such a compelling case study in modern economic development. I mean, they are attempting to leapfrog decades of traditional, agonizingly slow exploration by deploying cutting-edge technology.
Right.
The magnetic and gravity mapping will unequivocally reveal the geological truth of the Earth, but the economic truth of extracting that wealth will always be bound by the physical world. This single-window system clears the paperwork, but it doesn't clear the desert.
As we draw this discussion to a close, I think it is clear that we have found a significant point of convergence. Both of us agree that this first comprehensive aerial survey since 1984, working in tandem with the transformation of the authority into an independent economic entity, represents a historic, structural modernization of Egypt's approach to its natural resources.
Definitely.
The deployment of advanced geophysical technologies across these 6 vast regions is an undeniable leap forward in understanding what actually lies beneath the sand.
Absolutely. No one can argue against the immense value of having accurate, high-fidelity data. The partnership with Excalibur and local scientific agencies to map these resources is basically a textbook example of how a nation should inventory its natural wealth in the 21st century.
Yeah.
The modernization is real, it is substantive, and it is long overdue.
Where we continue to diverge, however, is on the ultimate economic power of these specific reforms. I maintain that creating a frictionless, data-rich investment environment through the one-stop shop and the upcoming digital portal is the definitive catalyst for growth. By removing the enormous financial risks of blind exploration and cutting through the bureaucratic labyrinth, I believe this strategy guarantees the influx of foreign capital necessary to reach that 6% GDP contribution, allowing the specialized market to handle the heavy logistics.
And I remain convinced that while these steps are brilliant, they simply bring investors to the starting line. The true bottleneck lies not in finding the resources or getting the license through a digital portal, but in the gritty, capital-intensive reality of building downstream infrastructure.
The refineries, the power...
Right. The smelters, the chemical plants, the power grids, all needed to extract, process, and localize strategic minerals for the renewable energy sector. Bureaucratic efficiency, no matter how streamlined, cannot replace physical infrastructure.
It is a debate that strikes at the very heart of how nations balance technological mapping with industrial policy to unlock literal buried wealth. The true test of these new strategies will undoubtedly unfold at the Egypt Mining Forum in September 2026, where the global market will respond to this unprecedented release of data.
It's going to be fascinating to watch.
We highly suggest our listeners continue to follow the outcomes of that forum, as it will be the proving ground for everything we've discussed today.
It will certainly be the moment where the pristine geological maps meet the unforgiving financial models.
Indeed. We started today by talking about walking into a massive, dark warehouse with a tiny flashlight and how Egypt has finally decided to flip on the industrial floodlights.
The lights are on.
The lights are now on, and the whole world can see the scale of the potential hidden beneath the earth. The only question left is whether seeing the treasure is enough to ensure it can be carried out. Thank you for joining us.